we'd like to first welcome Chad Riley from ICAST, who's here, and to see our proposal for providing solar cooling solutions for rural Tunisia. So, 5 years ago, Nail, he's a recent graduate in industrial maintenance, and he had this vision for Tunisia to start using recycled plastic waste to create agricultural tubing. And to do so, he needed a bank loan. So he went out, worked with oddity of strange jobs, including like harvesting tomatoes and fixing cars, and just all to do this. And then when he tried to meet with the governors to find land declaration, land space like that, he had no luck whatsoever, couldn't even make an appointment. And then he went to the unemployment office, and still no luck. Just they promised to set him up with investors, and it just never happened. And so this is not a singular problem in Tunisia, but it's been mounting like that. Unemployment's 18%. There's just not a market for that. But luckily, recently, with strides that they made along with the Mediterranean solar plan, they're starting to institute renewable energies and solar particularly. So, for our proposal, I'd like to give us the outline. We're going to be talking about energy profiles and such, legal regulations for Tunisia. Consulting services that we at Helios offer, alternatives, the criteria that we're going to grade the alternatives on to get the best solutions possible, our team's quality assurance, schedule, and a summary proposal. So, Tunisian energy profiles. You can see Tunisia is located here on the northern tip of Africa, on the Mediterranean Sea. Currently, 99.5% of the population has access to electricity, so they're a developed nation. However, as you can see here, it's their main energy source is gas and oil. Currently, it's like 2% renewables, which is only a fraction of solar. But with the Desert Tech plan for 2050, they want to completely reverse that and have almost exclusively wind and solar power. And so the Tunisian solar plan, which was instituted in 2009, is one of the biggest focuses for that. Currently, as you can see, there's only about 140 installed capacity of renewable energy. But by 2016, they want 16% of their production to be renewable, and by 2030, 40%. And you can see up to 1,700 installed capacity megawatts in solar. And then so for the regulatory framework, like how we're going to go about completing this project and such, we're going to be going through the ANME, which is the National Agency of Energy Control. And they're accountable to the Tunisian Ministry of Industry and Energy also, kind of oversees all the regulations. The STEG, the Tunisian Society of Electricity and Gas, manages all energy in Tunisia, so they own all the grids, they provide 88% of the domestic energy there. And so we want to make sure that we adhere with their laws and practices as well. As for incentives, recently in 2004 they passed a law, the ANME did, that gives government subsidies to renewable programs and also tax breaks. And World Bank in the U.S., Qatar, a bunch of places have invested to make Tunisia a net exporter of solar power energy. And I'd like to hand it over to our project manager, Stephen.
So we at Helios Consulting are providing our services for a prototypical commercial building in Tunisia. ICAST has 3 offices in Sidi Bouzid, Medellin, and Tatooine. And this is a typical example of a commercial scale building that we'll be designing for. A lot of their buildings are made out of this ashlar stone. And this is actually an technical institute in Medellin, the graduates of which may even be getting jobs like this man that we mentioned earlier in the kind of field of solar thermal and other solar technologies. So this is an annual cooling and heating load for a building in Tunisia. It's a 150 square meter building, maybe the size of this room or a bit larger. Obviously, you can see that mid to late summer is when the peak cooling load is, and there is a minimal heating load in the winter. But this just goes to show there's a lot of opportunity for energy efficiency in the building sector. Actually, right now, 43% of electricity used in buildings in Tunisia is used for cooling, so there's a lot of opportunity there. So here's a cooling load overlaid on the global solar radiation during a typical day in Tunisia. You can see the solar radiation goes to zero at sunset, while the cooling load does still kind of continue at night. However, this graph just really shows how applicable solar technology is for cooling because they match up so well. So at Helios, we just really want to strive for high quality and for excellence. We want to provide cost-effective, financially viable alternatives for solar thermal cooling. We also want to take into account environmental sustainability. And we want to work closely with ICAST and have their input and criteria be very important to our design process. And because it's international, we want to design not only to the Tunisian regulations and standards, but also to a level of excellence that's really admirable at international standards as well. So now I'll introduce Anthony. He's going to be our chief editor during our design process, and he'll be talking about technical solutions.
Thanks, Steven. So first of all, I'd like to ask how many of you have taken a course that involved solar energy or have work experience with solar energy, just a quick show of hands. Yeah, a lot of you, so I won't bore all of you, but I just want to go over some of the basic technologies that we'd like to recommend to personnel like Max and Steven talked about being employed in installing and maintaining these technologies. So everyone knows that the sun radiates energy, and we can collect that energy and use it as heat or for electricity. And we can use that heat in cooling processes, and that's what I'm going to talk about with solar thermal. We'll go over the electric uses of the sun's energy. Right here is a flat plate collector. It's basically an insulated box. Allows radiant energy from the sun to infiltrate this glass panel on the top and insulate on the back so that none of that energy leaks out. You have a high boiling point fluid that flows in there. It's heated and comes out here and it goes through our cooling process. This is the type of flat plate collector we try to install, this scale rooftop mounted. Evacuated tube collectors, they take a low boiling point fluid, and when it boils, it evaporates, goes to the top of the evacuated tube, transfers its heat to another fluid, high boiling point fluid, and then as it transfers its heat, it condenses and goes back down to the bottom of the tube, continues the cycle. This is another array of evacuated tube collectors, such as we might install. Desiccants and add and absorption cooling. These are the kinds of chillers that we are going to use as our cooling processes. So, all of you have seen packets like this, possibly in shoeboxes, or else electronics, right? And so you guys just throw them away. These are usually, something that you just never pay attention to. These are the kinds of desiccants that we're going to use. This is a silica gel usually, but you also use zeolite or even liquid desiccants. And as you can see here, we have one example of the type of absorption chiller that we use for a cooling process. Right here you have the evaporator. It's in contact with air from the room that has heat in it that we're trying to cool. And so this would be at a low partial pressure or in a vacuum, and what happens to a liquid when it's at a low pressure and it gets heat? It evaporates, right? Shouldn't be the answer. And so that water vapor, this is usually water, will go into the desiccant. And I know this shows two chambers, but just to make it simpler, once it's absorbed in the desiccant, to renew the desiccant so that it can continue to absorb water and heat from the room, we'll use the energy that we've collected from our solar collectors and drive the water vapor off of the desiccant so that it can be renewed. It's dry again, essentially, to collect more water. And now I'd like to turn it over to Ola, who's our energy efficiency analyst, and she'll talk to you about the electric uses of the sun's radiant energy.
Thank you. So photovoltaics are a method of using incoming solar radiation to produce electricity. And the way that this happens is you have your incoming solar radiation hitting your solar cell, which is typically made of some kind of silicone material. So it can be polycrystalline, silicone, or amorphous. And what happens is when it hits this solar cell, it starts the flow of electrons, and that's your direct current. And it's going to go to your inverter, and it's going to be changed into AC, or alternating current, which is the most common form used in electrical applications. The good news about photovoltaics is there's been a lot of advances in these last few years to increase the efficiencies. So nowadays, you're looking at an efficiency of around 30%. And if you change your medium to be something other than silicone, you can see efficiencies even more increased up to 50%. The reason that we're looking into photovoltaics is because although they aren't a solar thermal solution, they are a solution that utilizes the sun to cool. Once you produce this electricity, you can use it in conjunction with your already installed air conditioning installing an evaporative cooler. And you do that for two reasons. Evaporative cooling is really good in areas of low to moderate humidity, and Tunisia's climate profile fits this very well for the vast majority of the year. And the other reason, I already touched on it, is that if you switch from a conventional air conditioning unit to an evaporative unit, you can save almost 80% of the electricity needed to power these applications. And the other technology that we're looking into is concentrated solar. And there's a lot of different designs out there for concentrated solar, but we are focusing on the concentrated dish, and that's because it really fits our scale. The other ones are a little bit too large of an application. And the basic principle of this is you have a concentrating mirror, which is focusing incoming solar heat to a focal point. And at this focal point, you're going to have a Stirling engine, which is utilizing this heat to make electricity. And these are pretty much the technologies that we're looking at. And all of them have one common thread, which is really important, and they use the sun. So unfortunately, at times of high cloud cover or at nighttime when you still have a significant cooling load, we're going to have to look into storage devices. And we're really going to explore this more in the alternatives assessment, but at this time we're just saying preliminarily we're going to look into storage. We're going to choose the technology that we want to go with based on the design criteria. So we've already created a sample survey that's kind of taking into consideration all these design criteria, and we're going to send it to our representative to hopefully fill out. And ultimately, we want to gauge the importance of these different criteria. Once we hear back, we're going to gauge the different technologies against each other in terms of feasibility, cost of maintenance, and replicability. And the reason replicability is so important is we're not just designing for one location. We have 3 separate locations in Tunisia. So we want to make sure that any kind of technology that we would implement in one place is appropriate across all 3 locations. And as I mentioned, we already created a sample survey, but we really want to put it under the scrutiny of our quality assurance and quality control. And that consists of 3 basic steps. First is a self-evaluation. So we're going to look over our own work and get it to a standard that we're happy with. Next, we are going to open up the floor to other members of our group for the peer assessment, and hopefully they'll provide input on how to refine the content and make it better. After going through this process a few times, only then do we give our final product to our client. And we do this because we want to ensure that there's a lot of time and effort put behind the product before we give it to the client so it's at its highest quality. Now I want to turn it over to Kellen, who is another project engineer.
All right, so really quick, I just wanted to go over the logistical and financial aspects of this project. Up on this chart, there's the 3 primary deliverables. The first is the alternatives assessment. That's going to be due on March 14th. And we already kind of talked about it, but it's just an analysis of all the available technologies and then the selection of the technology that would be most optimal for the situation. As soon as we finish that, and after the client review, we're going to move on to the design phase. This is going to be the biggest phase of the project. We're going to have this report in by April 30th, and we're going to move on to a formal presentation. That's going to be on the 2nd of May. And then on the next slide, there's a more comprehensive chart detailing the entire scope of work. Basically, the first task that we're going to have to do is develop a prototypical building. So this is going to involve an energy analysis of the energy used for a standard commercial building in Tunisia, and we have to research the architecture of the standard building and the current building systems that are in place. So once we do that, we can move on to a exhaustive research of both the photovoltaic and the solar thermal options for cooling. And once we've done significant research in those categories, we're going to use a decision matrix to decide on which solution would be the most ideal for the situation. And then this is all going to be summarized in the design report, and moving on from the alternatives assessment report, sorry. And then moving on from there, we're going to go to the preliminary design. As I said before, this is going to be the bulk of the project. The current estimate is 145 hours. It's going to be over the course of 5 weeks. And towards the end of that, we're going to do a thorough cost estimation so we know exactly how much the implementation of the solar cooling system is going to be. And then this will all be summarized in the preliminary design report and the final design presentation. So if you look at the bottom, the total project or projected hours for the project is going to be 585, and the cost is going to be 30,060. So just to conclude, what we're going to be providing at Helios Solar is a comprehensive solar cooling solution, completely customized for the climate in Tunisia and the needs of the specific building systems that are used there. And then we want to try and utilize the most up-to-date technology. And another thing we really want to try and do is take complete advantage of the we want to take complete advantage of the incentives that the government is offering, and from that point, we're going to move on. And the ultimate goal of this project is going to be that it can be applied at a broader scale than just the 3 sites. We want to be able to apply it to commercial buildings throughout Tunisia. So that'll basically pave the way to an expansion of the energy sector, the clean energy sector, which is going along with the current government goals and the needs of the Tunisian economy. So again, Helios, we're really excited about this project, and we look forward to working with ICAST on the rest of it. Thank you. Now I'd like to open it up for questions.
Are you going to be considering energy efficiency opportunities within the existing appliances and/or indoor load profiles to potentially reduce the needed array on a rooftop application? And secondly, I've heard of a great deal of research around the opportunity of gaining efficiency of solar arrays through the conversion to DC within the building for the primary main loads. Is that going to be something that you're going to consider in your research as well?
So I can speak a little bit to the energy efficiency because, as we were talking about earlier, switching from an air conditioning unit to an evaporative unit definitely saves a lot of electricity just in that. And seeing as how heating and cooling is over 43% of the electrical usage, that's a big cut. But there's also, I specialize in doing energy audits on buildings throughout this campus. So I think it would be really applicable to do an overall building envelope energy audit to see areas that you are wasting electricity, and definitely looking into insulation as well, because that's one of the biggest ways that you're going to lose a lot of electricity. As for switching the entire building to DC, that would definitely cut down on a lot of the inefficiencies associated with converting DC to AC. So if you can do an overhaul in the electrical systems in your building, that would be a huge savings as well. And we're going to be looking into that.
Okay. Both from a savings perspective as well as a cost effectiveness perspective?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic.
Let me add to that there's a program that's been continuing. It's called ProSol, and 300,000 square meters of solar water heaters have already been installed. So there's already this infrastructure for collecting radiant energy from the sun and using it to heat water. One of the things that we haven't mentioned is storage. And if you already have a hot water storage system that can be used to heat the water, you already have much of your infrastructure in place. And also for the absorption chiller, if you have multiple durations or multiple cycles of that, you can squeeze higher coefficients of performance up to 0.8.
Thank you.
Are you guys going to have contact with people in Tunisia, and if so, do you foresee any challenges in communication between cultural barriers?
Yeah, I think that. Well, currently we're going through chat at ICAST. We hope to, have some communication with the program directors at each of the 3 locations, just kind of see what their, what they see as the real needs in this project. And Tunisia is primarily French and Arabic-speaking country, so that is both Anthony and I have some French experience at least, so we can put that to use. Hopefully, they also have some English experience, so we can find some sort of medium ground.
Can I follow up on that just as a more detailed answer? Our representatives from Tunisia are coming out in the near future. I'm working on the dates and what they'll do. I'm hoping to get you guys set up with a meeting. And then you're correct. They are primarily French and Arabic, but they do speak English, so there won't be that much of a translation.
I saw with your image of the solar panels and that shiny disc thing. I don't know what exactly that was. Are those fixed, or do those move with respect to the sun?
So there's 2 types of systems that you can install. You can install the fixed ones, which typically do have a lower efficiency than the rotating ones, because the rotating ones obviously take into consideration the azimuth and like where you're going to maximize the incoming solar radiation. So it really depends on how cost effective it is, because if you're only going to get negligible benefits from having a rotating one, then it's really not worth the mechanics going in.
And that's for the PV, but for the concentrating dish, yeah, in order to maximize efficiency, it does travel.
I know you guys kind of talked about it briefly, but have you found any storage techniques to store this energy for cloudy days or at night? Because I know that's a huge issue with photovoltaics, is figuring out a way to store this energy that you generate.
I know as far as thermal storage, we could do something like ice batteries. We would store the heat energy itself. We would store the energy that was used to cool the ice, and we could later push air over that into the HVAC system.
And when it has to do with photovoltaics, I mean, most common storage systems is just a battery of a larger scale. But I do know that it might be an issue. I mean, you have to look at the entire year and kind of see day to day what is the cloud cover. And it could be that you have to keep a backup system so that in times when there is a lot of cloud cover, there is some kind of backup so you're not solely relying on the photovoltaics.
Real quick, did you guys consider any passive solar cooling at all, or is this just to basically use the HVAC system that's already there?
At this time, I don't think we've considered it. However, we're going to be doing the prototypical building analysis and the energy efficiency analysis on that, so that'll likely